Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we've got the TCG Matchmaking weekly power rankings for the OP10 meta of the English version of the One Piece card game, and also this is kind of like the 1 month later version of these rankings too. We also had our first wave of English regionals for this game last weekend, and we do also have a lot of the data here on my website, Eggman Events, which you can find linked in the description. We have 3 of the 4 regionals that were happening. We also do have our deck list table going over individual lists from also just not only the regionals but the store championships and just a bunch of other stuff. So there's not going to be a complete list anywhere, but we're trying our best to get the most amount of data, so you can make sure to check that out if you haven't already. And honestly, I think this is a really good resource because there's so many different leaders that are viable right now. This has been a really fun month for the One Piece card game as a deck builder, as someone who likes to do a lot of testing, a lot of grinding, and I think there's been a lot of just discovery too, which is pretty uncommon for the English version of this card game. So it's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to going over these power rankings as well. We also do have a tier list we're going to go over at the end, just kind of an update based on some tournament results and what I've been seeing the last couple weeks as well. But real quick before we get started, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We make a lot of content for the One Piece card game, and it does support us a lot, and I really do appreciate it. So anyways, jumping on into it, we do have the power rankings. And so real quick, this is a function of not only win rate but also based on how popular they are. You can check out the TCG Matchmaking Patreon if you want to know a little bit more of how they calculate these stats for it. But based off their calculations, we've got Shanks in first, Teach in second, Dofi in third, Luffy in fourth, we've got Lim in fifth, Zoro at sixth, seventh place we've got the Rob Lucci, we've got Yellow Eustace Kid at 8, 9 we've got a newcomer with Reiju, and we also have 10th with Juderly Bonnie. So generally speaking, I think the top 4 are pretty understood. I'd say these are generally what I understand to be 4 of the strongest leaders right now in this card game. We also see so many people on Shanks, right? We've got 33,000 people match wise on that one with 17,000 wins, right? There are almost more wins than most of the leaders on this chart, right? The only one that beats it is the Teach with 22,000 matches, but it's insane how popular Shanks is. I also think that Shanks is one of the most diverse leaders when it comes to deck building. They all kind of boil down to if they see their late game at the end of the game when they need to see it. But I do think that there's a lot of ways to get there, a lot of different avenues. So I think that's really important. So we do see like a 52% win rate, and we also have the matchup charts that we'll look at in a little bit. We also do see a newcomer Lim a little bit more present in this meta as well. It definitely did get a lot of support from people seeing it just do well, right? We did see it win and get second place for the London UK regionals. We also did see a top 16 finish here in Pasadena as well with Lim, and I think a lot of people have been testing with it, so I think more people are on the deck in general. It's been boasting a little bit over a 50% win rate, so I think that's been solid. Personally, I've been really enjoying the testing, and I really do take a lot of inspiration from the builds that have been topping as well, so it's been really cool to discover a leader that, if I'll be honest, I didn't think was going to be super relevant going on into this meta. So that's been really cool. Then on the bottom 5, I think these have been kind of rotating around. Zoro, Lucci, Eustace Captain Kidd, Reiju, and Bonnie are all, I think, in that spot. We do sometimes see like Smoker and Usopp get into this top 10, but just not this week, despite Usopp getting some tops this past weekend and also Smoker winning the Greece regionals that we had for that one. So I don't have as much data for that event. I don't think a lot of people do. I do have the first place list, so you can check that out if you want to, and I do think it's interesting, right? I think there's clearly a lot more than these 10 leaders in this metagame right now, which some metas are not that case. It's like, oh, these are the 5 and then just kind of a random smattering of a couple others, but these are all 10 very viable leaders in this meta, and there's definitely room for others as we see fit as well. So jumping into the matchup chart real quick, and again, you can check out all of this on my website, Eggman Events, which is linked in the description. Also, if you are a patron for TCG Matchmaking, you do get more of this data and you get to filter it a little bit more, so make sure to check out that if you guys are interested. But we do see kind of what we've been seeing, where one, Shanks has a lot of good matchups, right? I think Shanks is in the spot where this has always been the mantra for this deck whenever I've been seeing it. Shanks can win every matchup and lose every matchup. I think that's pretty clear. Sometimes you have a matchup that's super in your favor, but then you brick and then there's really nothing you can do about it. There's a lot of 50-ish percent matchups that really help help it out. I do think that Teach is probably one of its worst consistent ones. Zoro's a little bit, not too bad or not too good for us either, with 45% win rates. But again, so what, right? Like a -1, right? A 45% win rate is still pretty attainable, I think. Teach is also a deck that's generally really consistent, but if they miss out on their early stage or their early searches, they can fall behind as well. And then Zoro, I think most people are kind of more on the animal build, which can high roll a lot, but can also low roll a lot. And I've been seeing, Shanks be very popular with Lucky Roo lately, now that we don't have as much of the Doflamingo around. It's still around, but not as much. We also do have Teach, which, having a good matchup into Shanks, I think is very valuable in this meta. We do have some decks that are a little bit tougher with the Purple Luffy, the Lim, and the Dofi all being aggressive, as well as Zoro. I think these are all decks that are just not in the favor for Teach. I don't think they're obviously as present as Shanks, and I do think that you can tech for these matchups in general, so that is helpful, but I do think Teach does have a bit of a more lopsided matchup spread, but the kind of consistency you get from it helps it out a lot. We do see Purple Luffy as well, just being, again, pretty solid. I'd say it's like mildly like low win percentage, and I kind of attribute that more to Purple Luffy being more dice roll centric for a lot of their matches, so that makes it a little bit lopsided when you see these negative matchups. A lot of these -1s are 45%, but that also means that if you get the first roll, the roll that you want, I think that win rate increases for you a little bit more, so that helps out a lot. You also see Lim, where our worst matchup seems to be Shanks in this matchup, which again is very present, but outside of that, most other matchups are very fair for us right now, right? Again, within the realm of like going either way, right? Nothing too outrageous, but 55 or +1 at times is really helpful against most decks in the format. Dofi is a little bit not in our favor, but I think that deck again is not super around, and so that is really tempting, right? If you can figure out the Shanks matchup with a build of Lim, I think you can be in a really good spot in this meta too. We also have Doflamingo, pretty even matchup spread. Our worst matchups are both Rob Lucci and Usopp, which are not very present right now compared to where we're at in OP10 in Japan. So I do think that's helpful. The fact that you have a pretty even matchup against Shanks, you have a positive win rate against both the Teach and the Purple Luffy is really strong, and I think there's just a good matchup spread for Dofi, right? I do think the deck does run out of steam a little bit quicker without Jinbei right now, but there are still a lot of ways for this deck to still, accrue a lot of value. Just continue to have bodies on board, and it's still, I think, in a good spot. And then we also have Lucci here. So Lucci being able to, it's a little bit negative into both Teach and Lim, and also a little bit negative into Shank. So it stinks that this deck is a little bit, unfavored into two of the best decks in the format, which I think are Shanks and Teach. We do have some matchups that are good outside of that, but that is tough. And I do think that like Lucci is the deck that people are still trying to find the best way to build this deck and find your ratios and find the tech cards that make sense, since it did lose a lot of its identity, right? Getting rid of Moria and out of Ice Age means that you kind of have to go back to square one, but it's really cool to see a lot of innovations and people still do well with the leader. And we'll see if it's going to be able to get some of these matchups a little bit more in their favor in the next little bit. And then we also have Usopp, which Usopp lost a lot of its matchups, but it's its good matchups are a little bit gone, and its bad matchups are a little bit more present, which is a little bit tough for the deck, but it is very, it was able to get some tops this weekend, which is cool. And then we also have Zoro, which Zoro is kind of in this weird spot where it has a positive win rate against the three best decks in the format, or three of the best, and the fact that it's really good against the Shanks, the Teach, and the Purple Luffy. It has a bit of a negative win rate against Dofi, but not nearly as bad as it used to be with Jinbei around. And then Lucci's still a tough deck, but again, that's not as round as possible. So I think Zoro is a pretty safe bet for this format too, and it's been really good. So I feel like I've been rambling on this a little bit. You guys can check out the rest of them, but it's been pretty clear to me that the decks that have the kind of highest win rate are good matchups, are like Shanks specifically. It has a lot of great matchups. Lim surprisingly has been too, but obviously the negative matchup into Shanks really hurts it a lot. One last one I'll talk about is Reiju at the bottom here, which we'll zoom out a little bit more for it. But since we don't see Reiju every week, I do want to mention that this deck does have, again, a little bit of a bad matchup into Shanks and a bit of a tough matchup into Teach, just because that matchup is so bad. You really rely on a lot of your on plays and without them you really can't do anything with them. So other than that, you see a lot of the other matchups are pretty fair and in the green, so I think that's part of the reason why Reiju's been a little bit more on the uptick in the last couple weeks. But yeah, the Teach matchup is really rough, so if you find a way to make that matchup a little bit more manageable, I think that's good. But I think like Teach can just make it very miserable for you a lot of the time, so that can be really tough. So other than that, again, you guys can check out this entire chart on my website, Eggman Events, and if you want more detailed statistics, you can find out more on the TCG Matchmaking Patreon. But we are going to go over the highest win rate deck for each leader in our top 10 of the power rankings real quick, starting off with Shanks. And again, Shanks is the most flexible leader, I think, in this meta for building a deck right now. I've seen like the animal package, I've seen like the red hair package, I've seen like people say like the red hawk is a different package. I've seen the no package. You just go to the late game and hope you get there and run good stuff. This is more of the straw hat package, which I identify by playing the one drop Nami searcher, right? So strictly speaking, I'll say this a lot of the time too, Silvers is probably one of the most important cards in this deck. If you see Silvers on curve, you likely win a lot of your matchups, unless you're playing against Blackbeard, because it doesn't matter in that matchup. So this card is incredibly valuable for this card, right? Or for this deck, right? And because of that, I think that we need to just find some ways to get a lot of card draw, or to make it so we can get to a point where we can play Silver's Rayleigh and not feel like we're going to just lose on the next turn, right? And be in a good spot. So generally speaking, I think a lot of people have been playing a lot of the Straw Hat variant when they want to be able to do more things consistently on their early turns. That means that you can use the Nami to find Sanji, which can be just a fantastic beat stick that also draws us a card. One of the few ways Red can actually just hard draw a card in this game right now. We also have like the Tony Chopper, which is a good 2K, but also blocker, especially if we don't see our Lucky Roo. And then we also have the 5-drop Luffy. This card's a menace. The fact that it can attack 7K on curve is upsetting. If you don't get rid of it, it gets a free Dawn every turn afterwards, and it's kind of a little bit tough for some decks to interact with this card on the turn that it's played. So I think this is really valuable for the deck right now, and because of that, you get just a lot of value and you can push a lot of pressure. So I think these are all like a good way to start it, right? We are playing 25 Straw Hats, so without Nami 21, so that's great for being able to find Kick Course. And if we are playing Nami, I don't think playing the Gum Gum Mole Pistol is a bad choice. There are a lot of ways that this can just get some really good value trades, and it also has a good trigger out of life, so it's kind of like a mini Red Hawk. It can't hit leaders, but it can hit battle card character cards, which is important. So I think in general, most of the top end for Shanks is this, right? We play Backbin, we play Silvers, we play Dragon, we play Shanks, and sometimes the Goldie Roger. And then it's just up to you, depending on like what do you want to do before 7 Dawn, right? Before you get to your 7 or 8 Dawn turn, how do you want to get there? What's your avenue for it? And I think the Straw Hat package makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of them just kind of go down to personal preference. They're nothing outlandishly seems a little bit better in my eyes, but I do respect like the being able to get like a more consistent way to play Luffy on curve on 5 or 6 Dawn feels really good in this deck. So I think being able to use Nami to help do that, even just playing 3-drop Sanji on 3 feels really good too. So other than that, this is the build for Shanks here. And the next up, you've got Teach. And compared to Shanks, I think Teach is the one of the most restricted leaders for when it comes to deck building, right? We have such a good core of key pieces for this deck. We end up having like 5 or 6 spots for kind of tech cards in my mind. So one thing to mention for this one is this is a little bit more of what people call like the casino build, or the more like trigger based one. I kind of identify it by seeing the I bid 500 million. The reason that this card is in the deck, the main reason, is because of the trigger says KO up to one of your opponent's 6-cost characters or return it to its owner's hand. So it is generally unheard of for a trigger in this card game to interact with a 6-cost. Generally, it's like a 4 or 5-cost, right? Generally 6 costs are safe. Outside of like a beige trigger or something like that, they can't really be touched in this game. So being able to have a trigger that lets you interact with that is really good. Also, the fact that this gets a, can remove a Burgess in the mirror match without getting a KO, because this can return back to hand, is really pivotal, right? You can do something where you can use Von Augur, then use the I bid, and then you're able to get rid of a Burgess on the other side, which is, I think, very invaluable in that way. So because of all that, I think that the card makes sense to run. We also are a deck that just is so good at discarding cards from our hand to turn them into additional value. from using our stage with full lead, but also from using our leader effect inherently. It doesn't matter that we play a couple bricks because we can just get rid of them just as easy as we draw them. So that's really important. So other than that, I am really surprised that this build is only running 2 Von Augurs when also playing I Bid 500 million. But we are also playing the new Shiryu, which this card has been more and more obnoxious every time I see it. The fact that it gets rid of a 3 cost when, again, a lot of people are playing 3 cost Sanji in this meta right now is just perfect on curve. The fact that it's really hard to remove because it's 7k on defense. This card is obnoxious. It's been really, really strong. I'm happy that it's only original cost of 3 or less. If it was like with reduction, this card would be busted, but I'm happy that it can only do that. But that does mean I think in a lot of matchups, this can get rid of Tony Chopper if you're playing against Zoro. It can also get rid of the 2-drop Teach if you're playing against Dofi. All invaluable cards, I think, for those matchups to be really aggressive, and so being able to get rid of them for free is really strong. And I think in a deck like that one, so or not for free, but like for very little cost of playing a 4 cost. So other than that, I've been seeing more and more people on like 2 copies of Vasco. I think this was a card that people were kind of cycling out a little bit at the beginning of the format, maybe like running like 1 or 2, but I think it's been pretty cemented at 2 copies moving forward from there. So other than that, I don't have much more to say, but here is the teach list. Next up, we've got Doflamingo, and this deck's pretty. I know I said this about Teach as well, but this deck is pretty understood. I don't really want to spend a lot of time on this. You guys know what a Doflamingo list looks like, right? Most people are on 3 or 4 copies of Jozu now. I think 4 copies is honestly correct because there's a lot of 5 and 6 costs that people are playing right now. So being able to interact with that is really nice. 4 copies of Red Rock, 2 copies of the Gravity Blade makes sense. You can play Perfume if you really want to, but generally speaking, these are what people are playing. These are kind of the ratios for it. And, most decks, I think, are within 46 cards of this deck ratio-wise and card choice-wise, so there's not much more to say. So I think Dofi is definitely more of a playstyle deck right now. There's a lot of strong players who have a lot of fundamentals from playing in OP10, and now that Jinbei is gone, the training wheels are gone, and we are still finding a lot of success with the deck too. So not much more to say, but there it is for Dofi. Then we've got Purple Luffy, which is I think in a really good spot, right? It's been doing really well. It won a regionals as well in Virginia, and the fact that this deck is kind of lost its bad matchups without like losing any of its own resources, right? We currently have Gum Gum Giant legal here at 4 copies in English. There's nothing, at least as a recording. I don't know what's going to happen, but I do think a lot of people are complaining about this card in OP11 since we have 2 additional Purple Luffys that are taking advantage of this card way more than this Purple Luffy. So we'll see if anything happens in the future, but Purple Luffy will definitely take advantage of how good Gum Gum Giant is in this deck at that current moment. Other than that, most people are playing like the standard stuff. There's not a lot of wiggle room for tech choices, I feel like, in this deck either. I do think 3 copies of Onami is a little bit high. I usually see it like 1 or 2 copies, and finding like the blockers like this are a little bit tough to play. Like the draw 1 is really nice, but it is a little bit hard to justify. I know most people are also on the Hitokiri. This does help in the Doflamingo matchup if they don't remove it immediately. And there's some other kind of fringe uses for this too. I don't think it's the best card in the matchup, but if there's like nothing better to do and you are planning, like if you're playing it on 4 Dawn and the next turn you're going to 7 and play Luffy Taro or Sanji, you can get like a sneaky little removal if you don't find your Zorojuro, which I think most of the time you do play Zorojuro out, but it is not a terrible 4-drop to play either. So other than that, I do like the addition of Gamma Knife. I think it's been a very, very strong card for most purple decks in this format, and especially with Eustace Kid running around as much as it has been, I think playing this card at like 1 or 2 copies, if your deck can do it, is really, really good. And also the fact that you are able to like it's just like lets you like trade really well, right? Like instead of like saying like if you put in your mind like, oh, this card doesn't give something minus 5k, if you've spent 2 Dawn to be able to give a character plus 5k to be able to attack into something other character, it's a no-brainer. So I think this has been a really good card, and it's been cool to see it pop up in the last little bit. So I don't have much more to say. I think Purple Luffy is very strong right now. It is a little bit dice roll dependent and a little bit inconsistent at times, but when it sees its Luffy Taro on curve, when you're able to even like do like a double Luffy Taro if you feel safe enough to do so, a lot of decks just crumbled to how much pressure that's able to exert at the beginning of the game. So not much more to say, but here's Luffy, the Purple Luffy. Next up, we've got Lim, and this has been a really cool build to see kind of come out of the last couple weeks. Specifically, I know most people, if you don't know, I'm going to just say it. Every time I stream Lim and I have a build like this one, I have to talk about it. Why do we play Artificial Devil Fruit Smile? This card has, you never activate this effect. You don't activate the trigger for it. The reason you play this card is that we do have this 1-drop 2K with Orochi. Most people, I think, before this were playing Purple Trafalgar Law. There weren't a lot of hits for the deck, but there were some that were, made it worth justified playing, right? We do kind of need like a 1-drop to be able to play out to be rested, so we get a lot of our leader effects. Obviously, the Lim from OP10 is like the best card, especially since it has protection. And if you play itself on turn 1, then you can just set it active again. So that's really important, but you're not always going to see that. So Orochi on 1 is still great, and you can guarantee mildly that you will be able to find this from your deck at only 1 copy. There's 4 chances of it to be into your life instead, or in your opening hand. You can see your opening 5 with it, but most times you can know if you have it in your hand or not, or if you can get that. Also, as long as you're following the tournament rules manual, you can identify some other key cards in your deck, and if you can use the process of elimination, you can figure out what cards are not in your deck in other areas perhaps. So I think that can be helpful for a lot of builds. Other than that, I think that the 6-drop Sakazuki has been a really strong card in this format. There's, again, a lot of just good 5-drops that exist in this format right now, and because of that, you're able to get rid of them for pretty cheap, right? Being able to play a 6-drop 7K that gets rid of it for no discard, no inherent cost, right? I think that's pretty easy to do, especially in a deck that ramps, right? If we double ramp, or even if we go first and we ramp, we go from 3 to 4, and then we start our turn at 6. As long as we have something still on the board, we can get rid of whatever they played last turn more times than not. So I think that's really strong, and the Sakazuki's been great. And the fact that it's a 7K means it's really tricky for a lot of decks to interact with it, especially with us ramping. Last card I'll talk about is Adeo. This card is really expensive because it's a tournament promo that just came out, especially since people weren't expecting this to be a playable card, and now it's a playable card, right? Do not buy this card just for this deck, especially since I don't know how long Lim's going to last, I'll be honest. Lim could just be until the end of the month. Like EBO2, it could have a bad matchup in the green purple Luffy, which makes it tough, and as far as I know, it's not going to really survive into OP11, so that could be a little bit tough for the deck in general, but that could change. That could be something that's different from our meta compared to the Japanese meta. But I also don't think that this card is good enough to warrant being bought out at honestly the prices it's at right now. So if you don't have this card, play the ace. There's a green Odyssey ace. I'll look it up right now. Show it on the screen. This is generally as good. It's a 2K. There are some, if I was to be honest, I think there are some fringe situations where this card can be better if you need to go second and you need like another body out. This is 1 cheaper, which is important. But there's also times where you're like, well, if I can just use ace to rest a 5-drop blocker, then I'm in the clear. So you can run both. You can even do like a 2-2 split. I don't think that's bad, but I do think playing a couple copies, if you have them, go for it. But a 2-2 split would probably be a healthier choice, I think, in general for it. So other than that, we are playing Usohachi, which also is great for resting cards and is a 2K. So not searchable, but you just play the 3 Dawn for it. That also means that we have 3 Dawn for the Mihawk, which is such a good finisher for this deck, right? Being able to say, all right, even let's say we play the Usohachi, right? We're able to put 4 Dawn on one of our 5-drops, so we can make it a 5-drop 6 or 10K, attack with it, pay 3 Dawn with Lim, attack with it again, 10K. A lot of decks, if they're not expecting that, or even if they are, they can't really, take that much pressure in the late game scenario. So I think the new wave of support we got with Newgate, Anel, and Mihawk has been really good for this deck. It's breathed a lot of fresh air into a deck that really wasn't doing anything in OP09, and it's been one of my favorite decks to really discover in this format with these new builds that I've been seeing. So here's the build here with Lim, and it's been fun to play in the last couple weeks. Next up, you've got Zoro, and I think Zoro's kind of has 2 builds. I think the animal package that we see right now is the more popular one, but we do also have more of the traditional Rush one, which you guys can check out in the Pasadena regional top 32, because it did get a top 32 finish with it. But strictly speaking, like this card is insane right now. There's a lot of pressure that it's able to exert, and if your opponent's not able to answer it immediately, you just go off, right? You're able to just put a lot of pressure out, and there's not a lot that a lot of decks can do, right? I think Rob Lucci is probably our worst matchup with this one, and maybe I can reconfirm on this matchup chart real quick. Yeah, Rob Lucci's a solid 34% in that, which makes sense to me because being able to remove two bodies with their 4-drop Rob Lucci is really easy to do even without any cost reduction, since you can get rid of them since these are a lot of low cost bodies anyways. So but I do think the Just Shut Up and Come With Us is a weirdly powerful card. There's a lot of RNG that's associated with it, but if you can just, if you go second, you have two of these in your hand and you play out even just one 3-drop chopper and then like another just not one of the super rares, you kind of bought the ticket to start winning the game already. You're making sure you have 2 attacks on the next turn. You're also in making sure that you're playing another body or 2 next turn too with a little Dawn investment. It's just, it ramps up very, very crazy to the point where if your opponent didn't play anything and they have 2 Dawn open, you might want to just wait and kind of see what happens. So I don't have much more to say. I think Zora's in a good spot for this format. It's a little bit aggressive for my taste and sometimes a little bit inconsistent with how the animal package works inherently, but man, you can turn cards sideways and be very good with it. So there it is. Next up, you've got Rob Lucci, which I've kind of mentioned this deck is just kind of all over the place, I think, right now. It has to get a new identity with the restriction list, and it's been really cool to see a lot of different builds kind of pop up. Most of them have kind of been a core based around how good Rebecca still is for this deck specifically. Infamously, the Gecko Moria Rebecca combo from Rob Lucci was insane, right? You're able to put a lot of bodies on the board. You get a lot of cost reduction. You got removal on your opponent's side. And even without Gecko Moria, Rebecca can still facilitate a lot of that removal. So we do have the 3-drop Hina, which is really great to play off of it to give a -4 cost, which is pretty, as a backup Ice Age is fine for what this deck wants to do. You also can play a Brook, so if you either need reduction or if you need like a KO ability off Rebecca, you can get that there. With not only Brook, but with the Spandine, you can also use it to use the effect to get the Rob Lucci out to get the KO, or even Spandine to get either the Kaku or the Khalifa. There's just so much like Spandine can kind of tempo into depending on what you need at that current moment, and so develop a blocker, which is really good. So I do think that the Tempest Kick is more valuable than ever, but I also think that there's just a lot of situations where the trash is a resource in this deck where it wasn't earlier. We're just kind of putting cards to the bottom of our deck at a little bit of a faster clip. I do think the Monstery has gotten like reintroduced in this card game where it wasn't viable for a long time because Moria pretty much handled all of our recycling for us. So this being able to get back Rebecca, or even in some cases Sabo, if we need just a blocker that can't be KO'd, since some decks do need that, though. Hody Jones is still a card. Bent Beckman can still KO or get rid of a card without KOing it, but Sabo can still be really good for some cycle if you need to. And then top end, we have 4 whole copies of Kaido. I've been really, really liking this card in the deck right now. Compared to where we were with the Gecko Moria, I feel like Rob Lucci has a lot more cards in hand than usual. And also, a lot of their cards are more valuable, right? But this being able to get some good trades, this also really helps out in the Blackbeard matchup because you are able to get rid of cards, and not only on the board but also in your opponent's hand. And 7 or less with this guy, 8 or less with leader effect, and then also if you have Tempest Kick to get that last 2 to get rid of a 10 cost, I think just gets rid of most cards on the deck, so, or in the game right now, which is really good. Lastly, we got Tashigi. You guys are probably wondering why our leader isn't Smoker. Why do we play this? The main reason is because this has an activate main. If the turn this character is played, place up to one of your opponent's cost 0 characters into this owner's trash. So let's say we have 9 Dawn. We need to get rid of a 5 cost on our opponent's side. We can do something like, oh, we played Rebecca to give to play a Hina to give something -4 cost, or we play Laboon, or we have a Kuzan that's able to attack, right? You can still pair that up with Tashigi really nice, especially if you curve out where you played Kuzan on 4 and then Tashigi on 6. You can get rid of pretty much anything your opponent played last turn, which is really good. And it doesn't, proc KO effects. So if you're playing against a Lucky Roo or something like that from a Shanks, this can get rid of it if you just do your Kuzan swing first. And they kind of feel forced to block with it or use their leader effect first, which just means you get the KO with it on Tashigi. So I think that's good, especially with how relevant Shanks has been in the last little bit. So other than that, I really like all these builds of Lucci. It's been definitely more of my playstyle compared to the other ones where you just play Gecko Moria and you make your good combo. I feel like there's more of a resource balance. There's a lot more of like decision making, and I think that's really cool for this leader too. So here's the build there. Next up, we've got Eustace Captain Kidd, the yellow one from OP10, and this might be the best leader from OP10 by just how well it's been doing. I know that Usopp's been around. I know that Smoker's been around a little bit, but I think this one might be one of the better ones, which is definitely surprising for me because we didn't, from the leaders that we got from OP10, right? I think like Sugar's not usable and Caesar Clown's not usable. Like Green Yellow Law has been like fringe usable, but this has just been like consistently like the best one, I guess, which is again a little bit weird to think about when we've been looking at these tournament results. But this is a I kind of like the gameplay style for this deck, right? It reminds me a little bit of a Nell, just in the fact that we do get to these end game states that are which makes it very difficult for us to lose, mostly with our blockers just being able to be just these chunky blockers that get out of a free attack, kind of like how Nell's effect works. The fact that we're playing like cards like Ace as well as Trafalgar Law to be able to help us heal. The fact that Law in this deck lets us heal one and then also reproc our leader effect to give itself blocker at the end of the turn is invaluable. I think that's really, really strong for this deck and gets a lot of it means that you get another turn or two that likely your opponent wasn't expecting, and that can get you some W's when you are kind of your back's to the wall. I also do like having these vanillas with both the Cavendish as well as the Urouge to be additional blockers, especially like 5/7s can be really tough to handle if you're playing against specifically Shanks, and then 6/8s are pretty much difficult for most decks outside of like Dofi with a Jozu on curve or something like that. So because of that, I think these are just some really good additional cards on the board. And if they do have block, your opponent really has to respect them in a lot of ways. So I don't have much more to say. I do think this deck can be like a little bit bricky or a little bit sequence heavy because we are trying to get to like our life balance is really weird, right? Especially sometimes we need to make sure that our X-Drake is able to us to be able to use the effect from X-Drake to rest something, right, which is a balance. And but yeah, I do like this deck. It's been growing on me a little bit, and interesting to see how it does in the next couple weeks as well. The next up, we've got Reiju, which is the newer deck for this format, in the fact that it did get some tops in these last couple events this past weekend. It's a deck that got a little bit of support in this set. We got direct support with Sanji. So it's just a searcher for Germa, which we did not have as a one cost outside of the stage. And the fact that it can find stage, I think, is invaluable for this deck in general, which is just very good. With a deck that is all about finding your pieces, consistency is very, very strong and helpful. We are running also Gamma Knife, which I kind of explained is just really good for purple. Also, the fact that this can proc our leader effect, especially if we're playing in something like Teach, where they don't have any copies, like we can't have any of our on plays, that can be really strong too. I do think like the Porsche package is probably the best way. We've all been high rolled by Reiju, right? Sometimes Reiju just says, I win, I'm sorry, but I Porsche into each G turn 2, and I'm just going nuts with it, right? So that is very scary, the capacity of that. 7-drop 7k is just an absurdly difficult card to remove, especially when you're going into your 4 Dawn turn, which is just absurd. So this is, they don't always see it, right? It's tough for them to see it consistently, but when they do see it, my goodness, is that a force to be reckoned with. Lastly, we do have Foxy, which is just another 2k for the deck, but also has a somewhat relevant effect, being a Foxy Pirate. So activate main, you can trash this character if the number of Dawn cards is equal to or less than your opponent's. You get to draw 1. So if you need to dig 1 deeper to be able to help you find another piece, that can be helpful. And then I've been seeing more and more people play this Cosette as just a blocker. So if your leader is Derma 66 and your board has your board has 2 or more Dawn less than your opponent's, this character gains blocker. So a lot of people are already using the Chopper since it's a blocker that we can play off of Foxy Pirate Porsche, but also the fact that it is a Foxy Pirate, so it's searchable and it gets a Dawn back and is blocker is good, right? The fact that it's 0 power doesn't really matter. And so being able to stick 2 blockers, or sometimes even 3 if you're worried about like a Hody, can be enough for some decks to be deterred when they're just really dependent on the number of attacks, not how big the attacks are. So other than that, I have been seeing a big uptick in Reiju in the last couple of days, and it's going to be interesting to see if it's able to get some more tops in these next couple of events. But here's the build here. And then to wrap out the top 10, we've got Bonnie, which is a little bit surprising to me that it's been, I think, a little bit lackluster in this format. I think myself and others had high expectations for this deck with the inclusion of Tashigi and Smoker, both really great cards for green in general, but also the fact that essentially Smoker is a 4-drop 7k with Banish is already bonkers, but then it makes everything cost 1 less every turn later once you get there. Or, you get a Dawn refunded, and it makes it really easy for you to have a Dawn left open for your Bonnie effect for each one. So I do think that's something that's so strong for the deck. We don't really have any consistency besides Bonnie being able to use its effect to find a Supernova, which best one we have is still 8-drop Kid, right? But the fact that we don't have consistent ways to find Hody Jones is a bit of an issue. The fact that Shanks is one of our best cards to play on curve because it just gets rid of anything, rested is fantastic. And the fact that it's a 9-drop 11k means that a lot of decks have a hard time interacting with this card. And even Doflamingo, right? Which is searchable if you want to build your deck that way. But it feels like that Bonnie's just kind of behind when it comes to like consistency. We have to play a lot of bricks, almost 20, though 3 of them are 2Ks there. But you will ask most people like, oh man, this deck is so good. But the issue is that like it's not even like a case where we have too many non-counters, but all the cards we were playing are the cards with counter, right? With the exception of like Smoker. Most of the time we're like, well, I have to play Cavendish and Bonnie, right? Or like I have to play Uruj, which we haven't seen this card as often lately, but it has been getting a little bit of a resurgence. I think with Doflamingo a little bit less present, this stays on board a little bit more, which is interesting to see. And then we also see like Bart, which is great off of the Eustace Kid, and can get some additional draw here and there with some additional abilities. So other than that, I think Bonnie's in an okay spot. I do think it's been a little bit less popular and less successful than people were expecting, including myself. I thought this was a little bit stronger in this meta, but it hasn't really shown me the results quite yet. So anyways, these are the builds for this week, and let's go to my updated tier list. All right, and here's my current version of the tier list for the OP10 meta of the English version of the One Piece card game. And I've been kind of flip-flopping a lot of these leaders on how viable I think they are. If you want to see the tier list I made right before this weekend on Friday going into the regionals, it's right above me, so you can do some comparing and contrasting. I do think that the tier 0.99, I think these are just leaders that are just like a little bit better on average than a lot of others. I don't think that they're like tier 0. You might even want to call it like tier 0.5, right? But I think Shanks, Teach, and Dofi, on a respect of how many people are on the deck and how successful they are, is a little bit more upticked compared to other leaders in my mind. So I think they are if not the 3 best leaders, or 3 of the most popular leaders in this format right now, and they've just been doing very, very well. Tier 1, we've got Purple Luffy, Zoro, and Lim this week, which is a surprise. I have been historically negative about Lim at the beginning of this format, and I've been kind of it's been growing on me since, and I've been really enjoying it lately. Purple Luffy, I know a lot of people put it up with these other 3 leaders too, so if you like the leader more, you can definitely put it up there. My issue with the deck is that it's a little bit more inconsistent, and it's kind of more dice rolly dependent. Whereas I think the other 3 decks above it do not care about the dice roll as much. There's clearly a better curve for the deck, but if there's a way to take away the best curve from your opponent's deck, you likely would do it every time, which I think is impactful. Zoro's is kind of the same way. I think it's like has some consistency issues, but it has a really good matchup into the leaders above it, but it also has some bad matchups into a lot of the leaders below it as well. So there it is. Tier 1.25, and I know I'm getting kind of obnoxious with these tiers, but it's my list, so here it is. These are leaders that I think are topping mildly consistently in this format. Bonnie, I think I had a little bit higher, but we moved her down this week. But we've got Bonnie, Lucci, Yellow, Eustace Kid, Smoker, and Usopp. I think these are all solid leaders in this point. I'm not surprised that they didn't top every event. And even like Smoker's like weird, right? It only topped like the Greece event, I believe, if I remember correctly, but it got first place, right? Which we'll talk about Nami, which had a similar effect in a little bit. But generally speaking, I think all these decks are really good. You've got some kind of tough matchups you have to deal with sometimes, and mildly some consistency issues, but I don't think you should be dissuaded from playing any of these leaders in 1.25. 1.5, I'd say like the difference between them is more of kind of a tone shift. instead of like saying I'm a Reiju player, you are the Reiju player at your locals, right? Like that's kind of the mentality I've been seeing more of these 4 leaders. Two of them, Nami and Katakuri, have always just been in this nebulous, like, we are viable enough in this meta, right? Like it doesn't matter that both these leaders are from OP03 almost 2 years ago. They just randomly will top most event, like every season, right? They're not going to be like the best deck in the format. They're not going to be around forever. I think Nami specifically has been in better spots, and I think this format's a little bit aggressive for it at times, but it does have a lot of good matchups. And shout outs to Adam for they're winning the Pasadena event with Nami two times in a row in 2 different formats with Nami as well. So you could maybe put Nami a little bit higher. I think 1.5 is where it belongs. And then Boa, I've seen a lot of people talk about this deck, and it has a lot of great removal and some good matchups, but I haven't seen enough to really place it any higher. It did get a top in one of the events this weekend, so you can check out that build if you're interested. And then tier 2, these are more like people like are really desperately, I think, theory crafting the best ways to build these decks. Uta, I still think is really good, and the fact that it does have a positive matchup against Shanks is important when it's likely the most popular leader in any given regional room. But the fact that it does have some rough matchups across other parts of the board, in the meta, is a bit tough for the deck too. So it's kind of the same thing as Lim, I would say that, but in reverse, right? Where you have like Lim has a lot of great matchups, but Shanks isn't one of them. Uta has a really good Shanks matchup, but the deck is a little bit linear and has some trouble into other decks, especially decks that are able to spam the board more consistently than it is, even if it is able to get a lot of card advantage. So then we just kind of have a suite of like aggressive red decks. I think Betty, Newgate, and Sanji's been like a newer one for me. So this is my new ad for this week. I could easily remove it next week if I don't find a build that I really like, but I do think there is some potential for it. Red, Purple, Luffy, I'm generally a fan of the deck, but I don't like it right now, so it's going to be here in tier 2. Anel might actually, I might even put Anel 1.5. Why not? We'll move it up at the last minute. But I think Anel is fine right now. It did get a top or an X2 bubble for the Pasadena event, so I think there's some potential for it. But I think a lot of people just kind of drop the deck as soon as Kingdom went. So but the deck will get better, I think, in EBO2 with the new Anel 10 drop. That will help out the deck a lot, but until then I think it's kind of like in a waiting room for EBO2. And then Marco, I like Marco, but I've been having a hard time in this format. I think there's just better leaders at the same time, so I'm less persuaded that Marco's in a good spot. So this is generally my idea. I think you'll see a lot of different players with a lot of different tier lists, and I think their opinions are valid as well. But these are just mine. These are just my opinions into this format. So only other thing I'll say is that any leader I didn't mention is probably tier 1.5 or below. A lot of this is based off of the tournament data, but also based on ranked gameplay, and honestly just me seeing other people play. I've been playing a lot more One Piece right now. The game is just super fun. The meta is super diverse, and I legitimately have been like losing sleep because I want to play more One Piece in the off hours. So that should just say how fun I think this game is right now. But that's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Let me know what you guys think about this meta, what leaders you guys are really excited for, some builds you guys are interested in, and we'll continue this until EBO2 comes and maybe Ruins All are fun. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you all next time.